All right, welcome to the Krueg Show. Back with you. Man, it wasn't that long ago. I was just live streaming. But now we've got Brad Graham in the house. Love talking football with Brad Graham, and he's here. He's got a great channel himself. Everybody go like and subscribe Brad's channel. Brad's channel's blowing up. Brad is huge, and he is with us. Brad, good to see you, man. Happy New Year. It's the first time I've talked to you in the new year, and though I always have a rule, don't wish anybody Happy New Year at 5 days after January 1st, but here it is February 2nd. But I haven't seen you, and this is the first time I've seen you, so Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Yeah, man, it's been a while. I'm glad to get back on here, talk football, go over some old takes because I know I got to give you credit on a couple takes, but I'm glad to be here, man.
Well, glad to have you, man. And there's just, I don't know. It's like it's a labor of love to do these shows, right? That's why I do it. That's probably why you do it. We enjoy it, right? But man, I don't think I've ever enjoyed a football game less than Niners Eagles, because I was trying to explain this to my wife, and she's not a sports fan. But I'm like, honey, at the end of the game, there's a portion of the game that doesn't matter. And if you win, there's zero portion of the game that doesn't matter. But if you lose, it's the moment from when you know you're going to lose till the clock strikes 0-0-0. That's the dead part of the game. In this particular game, and maybe it's just my affinity for Brock Purdy or my belief in Purdy or my skepticism about Josh Johnson, if you want to say that. But once Purdy went out, which was 6 plays into the Niners' first offensive drive, in my mind, the game was over. And that I know, and we still had 2.5 hours, maybe longer, 3 hours of time before the clock actually struck 0 and it was official. It was the least enjoyable football game I've ever seen, because I just sat there knowing there was no chance to win, really feeling that there was no chance to win, and then just, how would it all be written out, and it's like, I don't know how you felt about that game, but I was so geared up for it. I did so many live streams, so much talking, so much analyzing, so many different interviews, so much, what do you think, predictions, and, all this breakdown. And then to have it end 6 plays into your first offensive drive, so it was tough to stomach, man. It was a really hard watch.
Oh, 100%. And the only reason I'm laughing is just to try to not to cry, because
Exactly.
it was that bad. I was at the game, so I was in Philly in that atmosphere. And when Brock Purdy went down, it was just one of those situations where you're on your third string quarterback. It's not like you have a backup quarterback that maybe has this experience or maybe could provide a spark. It's Josh Johnson. It's the guy you signed off Denver's practice squad in week 13 after Jimmy Garoppolo went down. And, say what you want about Josh Johnson. I mean, he is 38 years old, 37, 38 years old. He's been a journeyman. He's been all over the place. Hasn't really played meaningful snaps as of late. So I agree with you. Being in that stadium when Brock Purdy went down, my eyes were on the sideline. I was just like, every time he stood up, every time he started warming up, every time he went in the blue tent, like, I'm just like, is he going to go back into this game? Because if he doesn't go back into this game, I don't know how the San Francisco 49ers are going to win. And then you kind of go through like you said, the injury happened on the 6th play of the 49ers offensive drive. You get the touchdown from Christian McCaffrey. And when that touchdown went off, the whole stadium, like, the Eagles fans got a little nervous. They're like, oh, wow, they're scoring at this point with their backup quarterback. It gave me a glimpse of hope. But when Josh Johnson fumbled that ball in their territory after they had just scored, it felt like we were just I keep referencing the Titanic. It was like this beautiful, majestic, just machine just sinking slowly into the ocean. It was one of the hardest. I think it was. I don't even think it's a debate. It was the hardest game I've ever had to watch.
Don't make me do my my Titanic old lady. I can still smell the fresh paint. How was my little old lady from the Titanic?
That was pretty good.
Was that pretty good?
Spot on. Yeah. It was spot
Yeah, I do good. I do good impressions of little old ladies. MF says pig in a pickle sounds good. I need to go out of my way to when I'm up there next. It's such a new announcement that I started the show and we're now 5 minutes, almost 6 minutes into it without announcing that today the biggest news in Krug show world is that Pig in a Pickle is now the title sponsor of the Krug show. Title sponsorship of the Krug show. So if you haven't been to
what is Pig in the Pickle? You
Pig in a Pickle is the greatest barbecue restaurant ever.
Ooh, okay.
And there's two of them. There's one in Corte Madera in Marin County, and there's one in Emeryville. And they're open 7 days a week in Corte Madera and Marin. They're open 5 days a week in Emeryville. Brisket, sausages, ribs, chicken. They absolutely do it fresh. They do it right. It's amazing. It's mouth-watering. They have the brisket chili, which is amazing. It's chili with big chunks of brisket in it. And then they do potato chips that they cook in beef fat, which are just like, dude, I mean, it's the most amazing potato chip.
Larry, you can't do this to me at the beginning of the show. I'm hungry now. What am I supposed to do?
But go check out Pig in a Pickle. Damon and Mary, the owners of Pig in a Pickle, were sponsors of my show when I was at KMBR. And I told them, I said, man, when we get to 10,000 subs, I'm going to ask you to sponsor. Well, we got 10,000 subs, and before I could even click my fingers, we're almost at 13,000. We're closing in today on 13,000 subs. We've picked up 3,000 subs in like the last 20 days. We're at 12,742. But we just broke 12, like literally like 2 days ago. And we've picked up almost 3,000 subs in the last 4 weeks alone. So Pig in a Pickle is now the title sponsor of the Krug show. Everything that we do on the Krug show, you'll hear about Pig in a Pickle, Damon and Mary. So check them out in Corte Madera. Check them out in Emeryville. Amazing brisket. They're at 341 Corte Madera Town Center. They're in Marin. They're in the marketplace in Emeryville, Corte Madera, Pig in a Pickle. Check them out. Amazing brisket. What I want everybody to do is I want everybody to go to Pig in a Pickle, and then I want you to walk in there, see Damon, see Mary, and tell them, hey, man, heard about you on the Krug show. We're loving you being the sponsor of the Krug show. So thanks to Damon and Mary. Thanks to Pig in a Pickle. And go get yourself some barbecue and tell them the Krug sent you.
Go get your brisket, man.
Go get your brisket on. I'll say this, man. I won't even cook brisket because I've screwed it up so many times.
So
Brad. When I do brisket, it's tough. I don't cook it long enough. I don't cook it at the right temperature. I don't have the right seasoning. It's too chewy. If you do brisket well, and you've had brisket like Pig in a Pickle brisket, it's to the point where I even told Damon, the owner of Pig in a Pickle, I'm like, I won't even venture out to try to cook brisket because I can't make it anything close to the way you guys make it. So
Val says brisket is a sport, and I would agree. I had an offset smoker, and I tried smoking a brisket, and again, I'm just like, this is difficult because it's hours and hours maintaining the heat. It's like it takes real work to get a brisket to come out just fall apart in your mouth, right? Like it's difficult.
Yeah, Val Ramos says brisket is fire. It is absolutely amazing at Pig in a Pickle. Check it out. We got this one on the chat. Hendrix says Krueg in a Pickle. There you go. Also, Dusty Ghost with Larry, they should have your t-shirts there to sell. That's a good idea. In fact, I just got my merch the other day, and I've got a big box of t-shirts. So anybody who wants a Krug Show t-shirt, just send me your address. And we're not making any real money on it. They're $25 plus shipping, but I promise you I'll get you your Krug Show t-shirt. And Brad, I'll just send you one for the hell of it because you're that.
Hell yeah, I'll rock that on my show.
Oh yeah, well, I've got them in large, XL, 2XL, and 3XL.
I'm a 2X guy.
You're a 2X. I'm gonna write that down. Get one to Brad. He's 2X. Look at that, 2XL for Brad.
I'm the O-line size.
I'll get your address. I'll send you a Krug Show t-shirt.
I appreciate it.
Dusty Gold says I'm buying one for sure. All right, good. All right, let's get into the blame game because immediately everybody going right to Shanahan should have called a timeout. Shanahan should have challenged. I agree. You got me. I agree with everybody who says that Shanahan blew the challenge. I'm with. I agree with all of them. There were indications. You had multiple indications. One was Hufanga calling it incomplete. The other was, the receiver himself running to the line of scrimmage. It was a huge gainer, so the entire team had to run down the field. So there was a second to see everybody sprinting down. And I would have just, if I'm not throwing the challenge flag, I'm calling a timeout. One or the other. That one on Shanahan, no doubt, he's got to wear it, in my opinion. The other one of Tyler Kroft being allowed to block the backside defensive end, in this case, outside backer. I think that's 2020 hindsight. And I think people are going to town on that because that's the play that Brock Purdy got hurt on. And when he got hurt, that ended the game. And so that is the play that ended the game. And so we really don't have anything else to second guess because the game was over at that point. But I also don't really feel like that's like a fireable offense in any way, shape, or form. How do you view Shanahan's decision to go play action pass there, use Tyler Kroft to block Hassan Reddick on the backside? He eventually would bat down the arm, hurt the quarterback, cause the turnover, end the season. We all know what happened. The ball, by the way, came out in 3.47 seconds. That's the final. So it wasn't 1.9 or 2.2. It was 3.47. So you can make the argument that maybe Brock held it a little too long. You could also make the argument that he probably should have stepped up into the pocket, or that he should have been aware of his weakness in protection was Kroft on Reddick. Where are you? Where are you on this pivotal play that everybody is just losing their mind over?
I mean, I think we're pretty aligned on this. I did a little thread breakdown because you could see Kyle Shanahan starting to set up this, which was the 6th play of the offensive series. And as you know, Larry, you go into a game with the first 15 scripted minimum, right? You practice those all week and you have that in your bag to execute. And then everything that comes after that is either an adjustment or however you want to look at it. So they were still in the midst of their scripted plays. And on play 3, they come out in 12 personnel, 2 tight ends on the right side of the formation, and they run the same base formation, play 3, play 4, and play 5. Play 3 was a pass to Brandon Ayuk, completed. Play 4 was a counter Trey to the tight side. And so they took advantage of Hassan Reddick screaming upfield. You had Aaron Banks kick out Hassan Reddick, and they ran right underneath it. And then play 6 was the play action. So they went basically out of the same base formation. They go pass, run, play action. So in my brain, as you know, trying to put myself as best as I can into Kyle Shanahan's shoes, who's trying to set something up, I like that thought process. I like the way he was going about it from a schematic standpoint of trying to get a feel for this Eagles defense. I think when you say Tyler Kroft blocking Hassan Reddick in a vacuum, I can understand why people would get upset about that. Like Tyler Kroft in a pass set type situation blocking Hassan Reddick, who's arguably a top 5 pass rusher this year. Yeah, that's not an ideal situation in a vacuum. But when you're executing play action, and we see it all the time from Kyle Shanahan, we see these edge players blocked by Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Deebo Samuel. We even see Christian McCaffrey getting his hat on edge defenders. Like Kyle will use any type of advantage he can to make one play look like another play. So in that context of it being a play action, I really have no problems with it because Kyle has been executing this with success all year. So I when you talk about the hindsight being 2020 in a vacuum, like highlighting it and pinpointing it, I think you can make it feel a lot worse than it really was. But when you look at the entire context of the play, Brandon Ayuk was wide open. There's a little contact at the top of the route where Brandon Ayuk was fading inside and then cut across the safety's face. Looked like the safety swiped like his midsection, and it kind of made him not have a clean break. And Brock Purdy kind of sat in that pocket a little bit. And you mentioned, what was it, 3.74 seconds?
3.47.
3.47. I believe the league average is 2.5 seconds that a quarterback has to stand in the pocket and throw. So that's to me where the issues came from. The play was just a little delayed. So when I am trying to assign blame, which I don't even try to do, but if I'm trying to do a post-mortem of this play and dig into it and see why it didn't work, I'm looking at the execution more so than the design and the coaching. I think the coaching set up a big hitter at minimum. It just was unfortunate that whatever Brock was seeing, and Brock has been phenomenal at getting the ball out with anticipation. This particular time, he just kind of hesitated a little bit. It feels like he wanted Ayuk to be open and then make the throw, and just that little pause felt like the difference. And of course, Tyler Kroft didn't do that great of a job blocking Hassan Reddick. He got it by him pretty quickly. So to me, it felt like the perfect storm that led to catastrophe. But when we're trying to assign what the issue is here, I'm looking at execution more so than design scheme. So if we're going to blame someone, and I don't even think you can really blame it was just the way the play happened, the way it played out, and it turned out to be probably the most unluckiest outcome that you could have imagined.
Wasn't good. This is kind of interesting in the chat from Spencer. He says, Larry, do you think they should review? This is going back to the Devontae play. Do you think they should review fourth down plays that are big like that? Since if it's incomplete, it's technically a turnover. I kind of think they should. In that situation. I mean, it's all 2020 hindsight at this point. And as we're looking back on it, I think Shanahan should have thrown a timeout or a challenge flag and gotten to the bottom of it. And maybe obviously listen to Hufanga, but maybe Hufanga wasn't motioning enough. Or maybe Hufanga's a guy that in practice motions all the time. And maybe Shanahan knows something about Hufanga that we don't. I don't know. I mean, maybe who knows? Is there certain players that if they reacted that way, you would call a timeout? I also think it was just a point in the game where it's just like, are you kidding me? I'm not calling a timeout right here. We're right at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, 100%. And also too, like being in the stadium, whoever the video operator is, give them a raise because they did not show the replay. So I asked this question on one of my lives. What access does, because obviously Kyle wouldn't have seen it because they didn't show it in the stadium. So if he has someone in his ear in the box, what access do they have? I don't believe they're watching the broadcast, and I don't think the broadcast caught it until they came back from break. At least that's what I heard. So there was nothing in stadium that, at least from my perspective, where you're like, oh, that looked like a drop. It looked like just a phenomenal play by Smith. And obviously, I don't have Kyle would have a much better vantage point than I would. So there wasn't really anything to tip it one way or the other than their reaction. And I think that could have been a key to be like, all right, they're clearly trying to get this thing up and going. Maybe we call a timeout at minimum so that they can look at it. And I believe there's a rule. I'm not totally familiar with it, but I think if they did call a timeout, they could still look at it and determine if it was a catch or not. So,
and the booth can do it without a challenge.
So it just was,
and they have all the looks. They have the Hawkeye system. They got all the angles. So my first question would be, why would a place that has all of the replays, when the one replay that we got after the touchdown was scored on the television side, seemed to really clearly indicate that the ball hit the turf? If they saw that, why did they not stop it in New York?
Yeah, and that's a question. That's there's a lot of nuance that comes along with that particular answer of why they wouldn't stop it. But the simple fact is they didn't, and unfortunately, it took a 4th and 3 situation where the 49ers could have gotten the ball back and taken the stadium out of it early, and they scored that touchdown later, and it really did help change the complexion of that game. It's just unfortunate. So I think again, if you could go back and redo it, yeah, throw a challenge flag, call a timeout at minimum. It's just a tough situation that it was such an impactful play.
Is there any other aspect of the game that stands out to you? The one thing that stood out to me, and I really like this guy, and I'm sure you do as well. I've seen you talk to him before, and that's Javon Kinlaw. And I know Armstead has taken up for Kinlaw and said, "Hey, I didn't get over on the double team, and I should have gotten over." But Kinlaw just got moved. Whether we're talking about one play or
It was a
another
couple.
play, he got moved, and he got moved pretty consistently. And then if you go back and you look at the last, 5 or 6 games that Javon has played, he's just not getting a lot done. Now, his job is to absorb blockers. And so a lot of times he's not going to pile up big tackle totals because his job is to absorb blockers and free up other guys to make tackles. And if you talk to their linebackers, they'll tell you, hey, man, Javon is a big body. He's strong. He absorbs linemen, and he keeps our jerseys clean. But when you look closer at Kinlaw, he doesn't give you much as a pass rusher. And if he doesn't anchor against the run, he's not real. I mean, I was hoping that he would be an upgrade on DJ Jones. He's not. He's clearly not as good as DJ at anchoring against the run. That there's no question. I mean, we got this one from Dusty Gold. He says, no leverage, Larry. DJ Jones had leverage and pursuit speed. DJ just had functional football strength. I think Kinlaw probably stronger, but he got moved, and he got moved at will. I mean, I know you probably like him. Some people in the chat are saying that you're a fan of his. I'm a fan of his. I did 2 interviews with him. I really like him, and he's we really had some great dialogue, and he's keenly aware that he needs to worry about pad level and playing low, and he understands what he needs to do to be good. It's just a matter of carrying it out. What did you see from Kinlaw in this game? The highlights, if you just want to say the low lights, have circulated all throughout the Twitter world, and you can see him just getting bounced around. What did you think overall? Because I know you probably seen the All-22. What do you think?
Yeah, I watched the All-22, and it was a rough day in the office for Javon Kinlaw for sure. And I agree with 100% of what you're saying and what you're looking for him to be successful at, and that's anchoring on double teams. It's actually what I actually had him as a dark horse in this game because of his ability to anchor. But unfortunately, this game, it was kind of the exact opposite. And you could see because he wasn't able to anchor his gap and demand double teams, and the double teams were able to get him out of the gap and then get to backer. It was just creating these big lanes for the running backs to run through. That actually it was a bit of a detriment early on. He did get better as the game progressed, but at the caveat that the game was out of hand when he was getting better. So it was a little bit too late in the game. His struggles are well documented early, and yes, he was getting moved around on double teams, which is, I think that's why you want Javon Kinlaw on that one tech, or the zero tech, or wherever he's playing. You want him to command those doubles and hold those 2 offensive linemen at the line of scrimmage, and it just unfortunately wasn't happening. And it happened on that one play that was pretty viral. I think even Baldy broke it down. There was one play that they scored a touchdown on. He was able to get moved out of the way as well. So it's just unfortunate because I think we saw glimpses of Javon Kinlaw in preseason, in training camp. Then he got hurt, and I don't feel like we've really gotten to see the best version of Javon Kinlaw this year, especially since he's returned. So, credit to their offensive line. They have a phenomenal offensive line. Landon Dickerson is no joke. Jason Kelsey's no joke. Same with Malyata. But also at the end of the day, that's why you bring in Javon. You bring in Javon to be able to anchor against those types of guys. So yeah, it was not a good day for Javon Kinlaw, unfortunately.
And not only that, going forward, I kind of look at that as the key spot, coming out of this game that they have to address. They have to find another big boy inside
Mhm.
who, is a young player who can push the pocket as a pass rusher, but more importantly, can anchor against the run. You don't have to have tons of these guys. It's more of a pass rush deal these days on the defensive line than a run stopping deal, but you got to have a couple anchors. And
Yeah.
if Javon's not going to be that guy, and it doesn't look like he is, like maybe they might need to find another guy in that spot. The other thing that I noticed in this thing was like there's like 5 different ways you can lose, and the Niners did it all, right? You can lose by having double-digit penalties. They had double-digit penalties. You
Mhm.
can lose by being -3 in turnovers. They were -3 in turnovers. You can lose because your quarterback gets knocked out. Their quarterback gets knocked out. You can lose because you can get some bad, untimely calls that go against you that are bad calls. They got those calls. I mean, or they didn't get those calls. So it's like every possible box that you could check where, hey man, you could lose this way. They lost that way. And I want to get to the officiating. I hate officiating talk. I really do, Brad.
So do I.
I really can't stand it because people use it as excuse making. But
Right.
in this game, even the fumble that Josh Johnson had was a false start on the Niners that they didn't call. And then I know Baldy has defended Lane Johnson, but 1 or 2 of those had to be false starts. Lane Johnson was kicking out so much to your naked eye, you could see it, not even slow it down. So, but offensive line play. And that's when I saw Lane Johnson false start and I saw Baldy say, oh, he's allowed to kick out his back leg, and he really just is a quick twitch guy. I'm like, I gotta get Brad on. Because dude, you are my favorite guy to talk about O-line nuance. You played the position, you understand it, you're keenly aware of how good Philly's offensive line is. You've already referenced it. Nothing against Johnson. I think he's tremendous. I think he's going to be in Canton.
Yeah, he's
Were
elite.
any of those false starts, and I'm just wrong, and Baldy's right, or is Baldy, who's a little bit of an Eagle guy, is he seeing it
He's a
through
big
green
Eagle
glasses
guy.
here?
No, those were false starts.
They were false starts in your mind.
You even had Mike McGlinchey do it 1 or 2 times that they actually didn't call either. I don't know why. I don't know. Like, listen, I can definitely rationalize jumping the snap count. And I think that's something that happens all the time, but you have to be convincing at it. Like, you have to be able to sell it. And to your point is you could see it on the broadcast. You could see it like in real time, and you have officials looking straight down, like looking at the bookend tackles. And if they're jumping out of there before the snap is released, you got to call that penalty. And you have to be able to nip it in the butt. And they didn't, and they allowed it to progress. And it was an issue. Lane Johnson absolutely was jumping off sides. It was just the officials in this game. There wasn't a whole lot of consistency. There's a lot of ticky tack, and then they just didn't call plays too. It was unfortunately the NFL officiating this weekend just was one of the worst I've probably seen since I have been, watching football. It just was. I'm not sure I've seen an officiating crews like muddy up a game so bad. Like it wasn't lethal. Like, again, I'm a big firm believer of don't put the game in the officials' hands. Like, you play your game, you do what you need to do. So those outcomes of the game don't, affect you as much. But yeah, the Lane Johnson was absolutely far beyond just getting out of his stance quickly. He was a whole like kick slide back before the ball was being snapped. It was atrocious.
And if you give a guy who's that good that kind of an edge, man. And then I agree with MF, who says the Jimmy Ward PI was ticky tack. The
Yep.
roughing the punter was horrible.
They
JP
pushed
Mason was
into him.
held and then thrown into the punter, and for that call to go against him, I mean, and that's, to me, that's got to be a hold.
Well, it's
Hold
crazy
on the
because the first punt of the Dallas game, they ran into Mitch Wishnowsky, didn't call it. and he wasn't thrown.
Right.
So it's just officiating. It's the lack of consistency, and just blatant missed calls or no calls. And it's just unfortunate for a league that has so many resources and generates so much money, that continues to be a talking point. You want the talking point to be the play on the field, not the zebras.
No question. We're talking Niner football here with Brad Graham. Welcome to the Krueg show on a Wednesday. All right. What'd you think of the presser? Did you watch the presser today between the Kyle and John presser?
Absolutely.
What was your
Presser.
takeaway? There's a bunch of stuff in there. I mean, that's
there's
for
a
sure.
bunch of stuff in there. They made me feel a little bit better about the Trent Williams situation. Obviously, Trent Williams told reporters that he didn't say no. So him not saying no to retirement kind of opened the door for speculation that he could be leaning towards retirement. And Trent Williams is one of my all-time favorite players. 49er, not 49er, doesn't matter. So that would be devastating if Trent Williams retired. But Kyle did make me feel a little bit better about saying he'd be surprised if Trent wasn't fired up, ready to go in a couple weeks from now. And, again, it's been a grind of a year. The way you lose in Philadelphia, I could totally understand and rationalize a guy in year 12, whatever it is, like he's 34. I could imagine him thinking like, yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll think about it. We'll process it. But also too, doesn't sound like Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be returning. So at least from what Kyle said, I don't think you never say never with this organization and the quarterback position, but it does appear that it is going to be Trey Lance and Brock Purdy as of right now heading into the offseason. And before I go any further, now is my opportunity to tip my cap to Larry, because I did a couple shows with Larry in the offseason. I think we did it before OTAs, post OTAs. Larry told me in OTAs that Brock Purdy was a guy. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, Larry. I did not pay attention to Brock Purdy in training camp. I was at training camp. I was watching. I was doing my scouting. But when it came to Brock Purdy up with the third stringers, my eyes went somewhere else. I went like, who else am I going to watch? Because I saw Nate Sudfeld, $2 million guaranteed. I'm like, okay, Brock Purdy's going to be Mr. Relevant. He's going to be a practice squad guy. I'm focused on Trey Lance, offensive line, defensive line, and that's where my eyes were focused on for my scouting purposes. But you told me Brock Purdy is a guy in OTAs. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, we'll see. Brock Purdy is a dog. Like I don't think I've had as much fun studying a 49ers quarterback since watching Brock Purdy. Like, and you called it, so I want to give you your flowers. I've given you flowers on my show. Now that we're actually talking, I want to give you your flowers because you called it. You were adamant about it, and you're 100% right. Brock Purdy is phenomenal. The way he sees the field, the way he executes, the way he throws with anticipation, moves in the pocket, you name it. Brock Purdy was playing like a veteran this year. He's playing in my opinion, he's playing better than Jimmy Garoppolo. So I just want to give you your flowers.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
And
it means a lot coming from you, dude, because I know I really, ball. I mean, ball, and I appreciate that. And I did feel a little silly saying it because I was like, am I saying that the guy picked last in the draft is legit?
I was like, I hear you, Larry, but I was like,
there was an old
scout
Brad who said to me, and he's like, son, let me tell you. And I'm like, all right. And he's like, you let your eyes tell your mind what you see. You don't let your mind tell your eyes what you just saw.
There's so much.
And I'm like, you know what? And I thought about it. And he's like, think about it. We'll talk about it later. And then, so I thought about it. And then I realized, you know what? I know what he's saying. He's saying basically don't go in to any scouting situation with preconceived notions. And just, if you see it, trust your eyes. And that's what I just saw a player that the ball was coming out on time. And I was so disenchanted with the draft pick that I had to go watch a bunch of film just to make myself feel better about the Niners picking him. But then I started to see it, and I was like, wait a second. And then I talked to a buddy of mine who's a road scout who had the whole Big 12, and he's like, that's my favorite player. And this guy really knows ball. And I said, he's your favorite player? And he's like, yeah, this guy's my favorite player. I'm like, why? He's like, because everything's on time. And I said, I go, what do you mean? He's like, everything's on time. He doesn't throw it early. He doesn't throw it late. He may not throw it with as much zip as you want, but you know what? It's on time.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's so much about playing quarterback is about being on time. But I didn't think he would be this good. But I definitely could see that he was NFL caliber and better than Sudfeld. But I appreciate that. Let's talk about Purdy. Kyle Shanahan was adamant today, and I was surprised. This was the most surprising part of the presser. Is that Shanahan seemed adamant that Purdy was going to be back in 6 months. And
He did.
I've heard a number of different people suggest that that is not a foregone conclusion, and that it could be 9 months, and it could be a year, and it could be 18 months, and he could never get back to the way he was. And obviously Brock has not chosen a path of I don't think he's, at least that I know of, I don't think he's picked a path of exactly what surgery he's going to have, exactly how it's going to happen. But what did you make of Brock's Shanahan's 6-month proclamation? And he seemed to be very adamant about it. And like you guys have already talked about this on your live stream. What kind of dialogue did you guys have on this?
I think, it's on par with kind of what I'm hoping for, because I think none of us want the Tommy John. The Tommy John is the
Full
9 to
year.
12 month. Yeah, like he's cooked for this year if he gets the Tommy John. There's two other options: just straight rehab, which doesn't require surgery, and you just try to see if it's able to heal naturally on its own, or there's a repair to the UCL, which then is a 3-month out of service. You start throwing after the 3 months. By 6 months, you're back. So it feels like, with Kyle saying what he's saying, the fact that Brock Purdy is still a bit undecided, because I feel like if you're going to get Tommy John, you're going to get Tommy John as soon as possible, to try to get a jump on that process and the return process. So I feel a little bit more confident about, we had a scare earlier about some, terrible report about it being Tommy John, but it does feel like it's landing more in the middle of trying to see if they can get it with rehab, or just going in for a slight repair. So I'm hoping for just a slight repair, and that we are looking at a 3 or basically a 6-month window of return, which gets him back in training camp, which would be huge.
Who's going to be the third quarterback next to Trey and Brock?
It's got to be some veteran, I would imagine. I wouldn't mind like a Jacoby Brissett. I wouldn't mind a Taylor Heineke, someone who has starting experience. Could I
Andy
don't know if they're
Dalton.
yeah, I don't know if they're going to come into challenge to be the starter, but like I think the 49ers proved. I went on 95.7 earlier today with Bonte and Butch, and I was like, the quarterback room now feels like the running back room. Like when we were talking about the 49ers running back room, we were always talking about at the end of the year, like we don't have guys healthy. We're leaning on your JaMychal Hasties and like these undrafted free agent guys. It felt like year in and year out. This year was different. We actually felt really healthy in that room, but it felt like because we brought in CMC, we had Elijah, we had Jordan Mason, we had TDP. So the room was healthy because it felt like it was insulated with talent. I'm kind of feeling like that with the quarterback room. Like I almost need 3 starting caliber quarterbacks moving forward to feel comfortable, even with a healthy Trey Lance, healthy Brock Purdy, and potentially a veteran, just because we've seen what happens when you don't have that. And it can be catastrophic when you need it the most. So, and we got lucky that our third string quarterback came in and didn't lose a game effectively since week 13 when taking over for Jimmy Garoppolo. So that was lucky in of itself. So I don't think Jimmy's going to be coming back this year. So I feel like you got to get someone, and you got to carry three this year. Like you see teams carry two quarterbacks. I think you carry three, and the third is also a potentially capable starter.
Dusty Gold says, call Trey's friend quarterback, as you said on your previous show. I was saying Easton Stick might be an interesting one because he played with Trey at North Dakota State. He's athletic. He's really not a starter. He's more of a backup, but he could start a game probably if you had to have him start a game. I don't know if you'd want him to start more than a game. What Easton Stick's not a quarterback that a lot of people have seen. I won't fault you if you haven't studied him. John Lynch said, he was asked the question about quarterback injuries first by Grant and then by Cole from Yahoo. And, Shanahan seemed aggravated by the question and said, hey, these quarterbacks all got hurt in different ways. So he didn't want to address it at all. Lynch said he thought it was a coincidence due to the fact that 4 quarterbacks got hurt. Are the 49ers, in your mind, Brad, doing anything that is a common denominator? I mean, these quarterbacks have suffered different injuries,
right?
But are they doing anything in your mind that would be negligent? That would be they're the reason that their quarterbacks are getting hurt? And the only thing I could come up with, and and it's interesting, I would say it's not even a quarterback thing because their running backs get hurt at a crazy rate too. I think that they go
gets hurt at a crazy rate.
Yeah, well, the running backs make sense to me because he likes these speedy running backs who like to get to the edge. And if you take a 195-pound Raheem Mostert and run him upright, he runs upright, run him a lot, he's going to get hurt. So maybe the speed that they're looking for in running backs means they're getting a less durable caliber runner. That's what I'm thinking. But as far as quarterbacks, the only thing I can point to is that, and I'm a personnel evaluator guy, so I always point to personnel. But Solly was a bust. Kinlaw's been iffy. They've used a lot of high picks on the D line. One of those picks probably should have been used on the O line, but they're so D line centric in their thinking that they probably didn't go for Wirfs when they probably should have gone for Wirfs. And maybe their O-line is not quite as stout as it should be because they've thrown so many of the resources on the D-line. That's my only answer. But is there negligence on the Niners' part for all these quarterbacks who keep getting hurt?
I mean, if I just look at the 4 quarterbacks this year, you start with Trey Lance. I didn't love that Trey Lance was used like a power running back in some instances. And I think we had a conversation about that dating back to the Arizona game where Trey Lance got his first start in his career. It's just, I don't love that game plan. And but to me, after watching Purdy do what he did, watching Jimmy do what he did, to me, that's maybe speaking more to the way Kyle thinks of Trey in regards to running his scheme, because clearly it didn't feel like he had that same confidence in Trey that he has with Purdy. Obviously, Purdy has a ton of experience, started a lot of, it was at 47, 48 games, whatever that number was, at Iowa State. And there's a lot of learning that comes along with that, where Trey's on the opposite spectrum. So maybe there's just an experience gap there of why the scheme was different. But, running your quarterback in between the tackles, one of the reasons why I said I don't love this is because I don't like my quarterback getting tackled by defensive tackles that are 350 pounds with regularity, you just never know. And it was a freak accident with Trey. Then you look at Jimmy Garoppolo. If I'm not mistaken, Jimmy Garoppolo was getting out of the pocket to the right, and he kind of got collapsed on by 2 defensive ends. It was a standard play, and the defensive end just happened to come down with all his weight on Jimmy's foot. That, to me, seems freak. Again, I talked about the Brock Purdy thing. I don't think that was on Kyle. I thought the play was there. I think the timing was a little delayed in it, and it just was a freak outcome. And then Josh Johnson, I mean, the Eagles' defensive line was smothering the 49ers at that point, and he smacked his head on the turf. So, I think it's I think it's, I don't like to blame injuries on people because being someone who's played just stuff happens sometimes. Like it just, it's, it's par for the course. It's football. It's 100% guaranteed injury type sport. It's just who can make it through and who can make it without getting a catastrophic injury. It just happened that all the quarterbacks went down. I know historically you could point to Jimmy Garoppolo getting hurt in 2018, but you can probably point to Jimmy Garoppolo as being the reason or partially the reason because he challenged the Chiefs defender opposed to just running out of bounds. Like, so it's I think a conversation that's hard to have because it can be emotionally driven. It can be there's a lot of nuance involved. I don't think it's gross negligence. But I don't say they're like completely absolved. Like I think the Trey Lance thing could have been hopefully managed a little bit better, but also there's a lot of freak stuff that goes along with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing it with other quarterbacks who run. If you're a running quarterback, Lamar wasn't healthy for the playoffs. Hurts wasn't 100% for the playoffs. Fields got hurt late in the year. If you run in the NFL, whether you're a running back or a quarterback, if you run in the NFL, you're going to get hurt. John B says Krug is not happy. Trey is QB1 at all, and I love it. That's not true at all. It's funny. Grant's so rah Trey that when I play counterpoint to him, it's like you hate Trey. And Brad, you and I actually, talked about the draft and the prospects. And anybody who knows me knows I am the guy who loved Trey. I was the guy saying I would go with Trey over Fields and over Mac Jones. And I was the guy who was saying, yes, Trey.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. One quote from Shanahan in this presser is interesting. He was talking about that somebody was asking about his Super Bowl chances. This is late in the presser. And he said that he felt this was the best team as far as his chances of winning the Super Bowl. He felt the best about this team's chances to win the Super Bowl. And then he went on to say our players were fired up every single day. But to me, I took that as a little bit of a slap at Jimmy and a little bit of a kind of a pat on the back to Brock. That why did Shanahan feel best about this team? I think it had a lot to do with Brock and his processing at the line over Jimmy. Shanahan 3-4 weeks ago made reference to Brock enables him to call the game the way it should be called. The obvious implication was that Jimmy didn't allow his skill set did not provide for Shanahan to call the game the way he wanted to call it. I mean, that's what I got out of that. I don't see how anybody could get anything else out of it. What did you think when he said that he felt like this year's team was the best team that he had or had the best chance of winning the Super Bowl? To me, that was a lot about Brock. And I guess the bigger question is, if they're both healthy, John B says I'm rooting for Brock, but who is the QB1 between Trey and Brock? Shanahan wanted no part of that, by the way, when Grant asked him that.
I know. I'll start off with the first part, and I'll speak to my perspective. I've never felt more confident in a 49ers quarterback under Kyle Shanahan since Brock. Like Brock was that for me. I've watched so much Jimmy Garoppolo football, and you just know Jimmy is due for 3 to 4. Like, oh my goodness, what was that read type throws? You weren't getting that from Brock. On top of that, Brock was extending. He was creating. I haven't seen a 49ers quarterback manipulate coverage with his eyes, not even close to what Brock was doing. And to me, that is like calculus level type football. Like that is like the highest level of being comfortable, one, within the scheme to understand that you can cheat and use your eyes to manipulate and pull coverage away from where you actually want to go. And seeing him look safeties off and then come right back across the backside, to me, I'm like, this is what I've been waiting for. I thought I wanted to get it out of Justin Fields. I thought I wanted to get it out of Trey Lance. But at the end of the day, I don't care who I get it out of as long as we get it, because once we did, we saw how potent this offense was with the weapons that they have. And who knew it was going to be Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, the one to unlock that. But that's what it was. And so I can totally understand like that process from Kyle. Like if he felt that confident type of way, I felt that type of I would say it on my shows leading into the playoffs. Like I've never felt so confident about a quarterback like since Kyle took over, and it's Mr. Irrelevant. It's a 7th round draft pick. It's a rookie. Like I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. Like I feel like I shouldn't, but like you said right earlier, let your eyes do the scouting. Don't use don't use the labels and the perceptions to drive like your evaluation. Just watch. And if you watched, Brock Purdy was the best quarterback that I think Kyle Shanahan has had since 2016. Even if you take into account Jimmy's magical run in 2017, he was better than that. So if they're both healthy, I really don't think it's too much of a question that it would be Brock Purdy at quarterback 1, because I believe they're at a stage where the draft position, the draft capital that was given up, that is in the past now. And what they're focused on is winning games. And right now, the quarterback that gives them the best shot to win games is Brock Purdy. And that's not a slight at Trey Lance, because we just understand that Trey Lance is a developmental prospect at this point who now has not played football, meaningful football, in a consecutive fashion since 2019. And not only that, when they brought him into OTAs, they completely deconstructed his throwing motion. They didn't have to do that with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy came in, and like you talked about in OTAs, he was pretty much ready to go. So it's just complete. It's almost like an apples to oranges scenario at this point. And it's wild that they picked 2 quarterbacks at the both extreme opposite spectrums. And it's the 7th round pick who is proving to be the most pro ready.
It's amazing. It's been an amazing season, really. It has been. Glass City says he did that. He's talking about Purdy. He did that as a rookie. Imagine what a little polishing will do to his game. God,
Right.
so excited. I actually see both players becoming good quarterbacks. I just see Brock as he had 4 years in college. He's ready to roll. He's ready to play.
Yep.
Trey reminds me a lot of Alex Smith, not from the standpoint of how they throw or anything like that, or how they move,
Kind of
but just
career
that,
arc.
well, just like great prospects on paper. Like the one thing I wanted Aaron Rodgers in that 05 draft, but it was undeniable that Alex Smith was a great prospect on paper. Why? He graduated Utah in 2 years with an econ degree. He had the highest Wonderlic score in the history of the Wonderlic. He was 6'4", 220, athletic, fast.
Yeah.
A lot of great traits. And then I look at Trey and I see smart kid, good family, very athletic, really strong arm. And I just think there's no doubt. And football's really important to him, which is obviously a huge factor. You
Right.
take those factors, and I that's why I loved him so much on draft day. But now watching him, I also think he's going to have an Alex Smith like career trajectory where he sucks at first. He's going to struggle. There's going to be bumps in the road, but he's going to keep working at it. And at some point, I really believe Trey is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. But I don't think it's going to be this year. I think it's probably going to be like 3 or 4 years down the road. But I do think it's going to happen. But I just don't know if the Niner fan or the Niner organization or the players, the locker room, Shanahan, Lynch, I don't see anybody being that patient. So I just have a hard time picturing him doing it here. But I definitely think he's got the skill set to eventually get it. And I think it's important to him. So I think he'll eventually get it. What do you think? I mean, so Purdy's your number 1 next year. Is Lance going to be the number 2? And if Lance is number 2, what do you think? Is his agent going to call John Lynch and say, trade me somewhere where I can be number one. I need to play, because I think I can make a very compelling argument to anybody that take Purdy aside, put him aside, and forget his physical status, that
Mhm.
Trey Lance needs to play football.
Yeah.
He needs to play. He
Yes.
can't sit anymore. He's got to play. So how do you solve that, Brad? I mean, one guy's totally polished and ready to play. The other guy's really raw and not ready to play. But the guy who's raw and not ready to play needs to play to get better.
Trey has been cursed by being a raw prospect, going to a team that needs to win now and wants to win now, and has a, you know, and this is just my perspective, a perfectionist of a offensive signal caller who demands consistency, I think, more than flash. And I think with Trey, I think you're right. Like, we were at training camp. I've seen Trey Lance in 2 training camps now. I went to Minnesota, watched him in the joint practices. I've seen enough of Trey Lance to feel like I've got a good feel for him. And when what you see out of Trey Lance is you see his ability to throw the deep ball, the play action boots, to be able to uncork it. Whether it's hitting a Trent Sherfield against the Chiefs in preseason, whether it's hitting Debo Samuel week 18 against the Texans, or week 17 against the Texans, when you had to have it, or, you know, whichever example you want to use. Trey shows he has the ability, but with him being raw, that's where the consistency, I think, plays a part in the difference between him and Purdy, is because Purdy does everything consistently good. Trey does some things that are really great, and even can do some things that Purdy can't do. But I think the gap of consistency is so wide that there's a little hesitation for them to put him out there, because I think Trey Lance would have benefited actually from being in like a Justin Fields type situation where the whole team kind of stinks.
Right.
You're going to put him out
Just
there.
go
There's no
take
expectation
your
for him
lumps, right?
to win. Like, because you remember the talk going into the offseason, oh, 49ers are Super Bowl favorites with Trey Lance at quarterback. Like, so not only was it going to be his first opportunity to get to play, but he had the weight of the world and expectation on him. And again, the best scouts and the best evaluators do what you said, and you keep referencing, just watch what your eyes tell you. But we know that the world doesn't evaluate that way. The world evaluates through, he's a first round pick, number 3 overall, 3 first round picks to go get him. That's how they evaluate. That's the preface of Trey Lance. And it's not like, okay, well, we're actually looking at what he can and can't do, and he needs some time, he needs some polish. Do we put him out there? What happens if we put him? So it's just this whole back and forth. And it's like, I agree. I think Trey Lance has absolutely the potential to be a really good quarterback. But what I'm reading from Kyle and how he's managed the situation is that he's not ready to Kyle's standards. And Kyle's standards are more aligned with Brock and what his standards provide. And so it's an interesting situation. I like the comp. I understand where you're coming from. It's not a traits comp. It's
Right.
like an archetype comp.
Right.
And I think Trey's unfortunate demise, not I'm gonna say demise, but his unfortunate circumstance is that he was placed on a team that was ready to win now, and they brought Jimmy back his rookie year. And I think that inability to go out and play week to week and grow in real time, we're now just on hold. We're now just on now he has an injury. Now it's like, oh boy, like, we're just the time is ticking, and it's now becoming a bit of a time sensitive issue. Um, that and Brock Purdy showed enough, and I think he proved enough to his teammates. He proved enough to the coaching staff that he's definitely deserving of getting first crack at quarterback 1. I do think it should be an open competition. I'm not a huge fan of handing starting roles to anyone. I think football is best. You get the best out of people in football when they're competing. So I think it should absolutely be competition, but I do think if you had to ask me day one of training camp, all things considered, both quarterbacks are healthy. I would say Brock Purdy's out there with the ones.
Couple last ones before we let you go. Mike McGlinchey, is he back or is he going to get too big of an offer and he's going elsewhere?
I feel like this might be the end of the Mike McGlinchey era. I think, we understand how he's valued amongst the 49ers space. And I think a lot of people would probably be okay with that. And I also understand it too. I just think he will get a decent offer from someone because unfortunately with the state of the NFL, offensive line play is just it's low key
Bad.
brutal. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
low key brutal. So when you come across a Mike McGlinchey who 49er fans don't really love, and he can get beat on occasion and look really silly like the play against Micah Parsons, but the other 98% he's playing, solid. He's not Trent Williams or anything like that. He's not a Lane Johnson. But he's a solid tier starter. And that, because it's a premium position and because there's scarcity, there's going to be, I think, a rise in his value. And I don't think the 49ers will match it.
Can Burford play right tackle?
So
they like Zakel.
I like Zakel too. And I personally didn't love Burford at tackle because he was a left tackle at UTSA. And you can tell he wasn't really a natural technician. Great physical traits, great movement ability, can be absolutely physical at the point of attack. But I've always been like, if you ask me, power or technicality, I'm picking the technical offensive lineman 10 out of 10 because I think with good technique, you can generate the leverage and power that maybe a guy who has raw power can't replicate. Or like I just always will land on the technical lineman. Burford, I think, had his ups and downs this year, but he has potential to be a really good offensive lineman if he can again clean up the technical aspects of his game. He has the traits, he has the ability. It's going to be very interesting to see if they do kick him out to tackle. I think he could play tackle, but to me, I feel like he's better suited to be a guard in the NFL. But I do think he could potentially play tackle. Be interested to see what they do with Colton McKivitz as well.
Couple last ones. Free agent that you absolutely would prioritize in bringing back. Who's the free agent that you look at the list and say, you know what? If I'm running the show, that guy's back.
I'm going to be honest with you, Larry. I haven't done a big deep dive into free agency yet. I'm still wrapping my head around the end of this season. I was planning on getting prepared for Super Bowl coverage. That's how confident I was with this 49ers team. So I don't have like a slam dunk answer. I will give you a position, though. We'll stick with the offensive line. I think whatever they can do to whether supplement with a free agent or they draft more O linemen in the upcoming draft, I think you have to keep stacking that position. And my hunt for an elite center is still on. Watching Jason Kelce do what he did against the 49ers defense just made me want an elite center even more. And it's crazy that the Philadelphia Eagles have an elite center prospect in waiting, and he's not even starting. It was the guy that I wanted out of Nebraska last year.
Cam Jurgens.
Yes, I wanted Jurgens bad, but he's like their sixth man. So I think the 49ers need to keep dropping assets into their offensive line and defensive line. Deron Payne would be a big wish list item, but he's going to be expensive.
Yeah, he's good. He's a hell of a player. What about D'Amico going to Houston? Is Kosaric, do you think, going to go with him? Because people in the chat were saying that Chris is from Texas, And is he going to want to go back to Texas and go join D'Amico in Houston? And then if that's the case, who is your choice for the defensive coordinator position? This is a big move.
It is a big move, and I am curious because I would love Vic Fangio to come back home and be the DC for the San Francisco 49ers. I know
Can he
there's a
run a
little bit of
4-3?
there's a little bit of a scheme difference because Fangio and his famous 3-4 is going to be immensely different than Chris's wide 9. So if they bring in Fangio, I could see a scenario where, especially too, if they give Chris the DC role under D'Amico, because D'Amico is effectively a DC. He might not be, obviously, he's going to have a different role as a head coach, but he's still going to have a lot of, skin in the game on the defensive side of the scheme. So I don't know. Maybe Chris brings that wide 9 to Texas. And if the San Francisco 49ers bring Fangio to bring him back in and they go to a hybrid 3-4-4-3 scheme, maybe Chris would then see his opportunity to go elsewhere. So I don't know. I love the idea of Fangio. Makes me feel nostalgic. But it
He's
would
a
be
damn good coach too. I mean, he's a
he's
damn good coach.
really good coach. It just would be the scheme conversation, I think, is an interesting one because Nick Bosa is not a 3-4 defensive end or a stand-up outside linebacker. So it would be an interesting process, I think.
Last one. Who wins in Glendale? I'm going Chiefs.
Probably Chiefs. I would say based on how, after watching the tape, again, if Brock Purdy plays, I still feel confident that the 49ers could probably
I do too.
make it. It's easy to say they win, but I would say it would be freaking a really
Would have been a
competitive game. Yeah, which makes it even more painful. So, and we've seen how good and unstoppable that Chiefs offense is. I mean, you can slow it down, but there's just going to be times where it feels like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, even, I really like Isaiah Pacheco a lot.
Yeah. Oh God, he's fast.
He's good. I remember him talking at the podium at the combine. He was wearing the big shiny Oakleys, the only guy doing that. And but I like that team a lot, and I don't like them a lot. I like them in this game against the Eagles because I do think there are some flaws to the Eagles. They're going to need a Jalen Hurts out of body experience for them to probably win that game. So I'm probably going Chiefs too.
I'll tell you a sleeper offensive lineman that I'd love you to study for me and tell me what you think. He's a buddy of mine. He played at Illinois. He's been a backup on the Chiefs the last few years. His name's Nick Allegretti. And Allegretti's like 26, but to me, one of the things I love about him, and we talked about this in a prior live stream, but one of my prerequisites for all offensive linemen that I want to draft are a wrestling background. I need a wrestling background because I need leverage, right? And Allegretti has got that. He was a really good wrestler, and he hasn't been able to crack the Chiefs interior, but he's a guard, and I mean, I don't know that he's a tackle. He's probably a guard. But I really like Nick Allegretti. Yeah,
sounds like a guard.
Tough. He will fight you. He's a good guy. He's smart.
Not bad
Not
center.
cost you anything.
Center size. You think he could kick down to center?
Yes, I think he can play center. I think he can play right guard, left guard, center. I think he could even play tackle in a pinch. He's that, right tackle, not left. But he's not a left tackle. He's an interior guy.
No,
but I think he could be.
You can just see by his body. He's definitely an interior guy.
Yeah, he's an interior guy. He's a big, wide body, and Big Ten background. Played at Illinois, 4-year starter, and has been a really nice player for the Chiefs. They really like him, but look at their interior. Their interior is pretty pretty awesome.
Yeah, there's pretty.
They've got one. They've had one of the
too.
better interior lines for years. I mean, going back to Dave Zott and all those guys, Grunhard. But I mean, that's an underrated offensive lineman that I really like. That I'd like to see them.
And
see
he's
them
a unrestricted
pursue.
free agent.
Yeah, he's an unrestricted free agent.
I'll take a look.
Yeah, take a look at Nick Allegretti. Tell me what you think. Brad, what do you got coming up to either later today on the channel or this week on the channel? I mean, obviously you had an in-season game plan. We were all hoping to be talking about the Super Bowl, and now it's got into this post-mortem, and then we'll get into the Senior Bowl and the draft. Are you going to Mobile?
No,
you don't do that.
No, I do. I was credentialed to go. I decided I went in 2020, and it was actually a phenomenal experience. I am mentally not prepared to get into draft season yet. I love draft season.
I know it's hard.
I love it. I love scouting prospects. It's one of my favorite things. But if I was in Mobile right now with the press conference, with everything, it would just my mind would be all over the place. So I really felt, and I was confident that I wouldn't be going to Mobile because I'd be getting ready to cover a Super Bowl. So
right, I was too.
And then it didn't go our way, and I was sick, just feeling sick, and I was like, I'm not going to Mobile. I need to go home. I need to go drown my sorrows. I just need to go home. But the hope is to get to the combine. So hopefully we'll be covering the combine, and but for other stuff this week, I am planning to have a 49ers player on. I won't say just yet, but on Friday is our plan. I'm going to officially announce it tomorrow. Just want to follow up, make sure no scheduling conflicts or anything, but should have a player on the channel on Friday.
Awesome, man. Looking forward to that. What time do you do, or do you not know? At a variable time?
Our time is set for 7 Pacific Standard Time. So that's when we're scheduled to go on. But again, I just, I like to try to wait as long as possible, just in case, because I know scheduling conflicts pop up all the time. So I just, before I announce it, I just want to make sure that we double check and confirm, and then we're good to go.
Well, Brad's an outstanding follow, folks, and you don't need me to tell you that. He's got more followers than I do, but a great follow on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. Tell people, Brad, where they can find you. Drive them to where you want to drive them.
Well, first of all, thank you, Larry. It's great to catch up. I mean, it had been a while, but I always enjoy our conversations because, again, you're a football guy, and we can really nerd out on, talking about
exactly.
traits and hip size, and
we'll do more of it. We'll do more of it in March and April for sure.
Absolutely. But you can find me at the SF Niners pretty much anywhere you get social media. We are on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. If it's a social platform, we're probably on it. So you can find me there. And of course, if you want to follow my personal Twitter, that's my personal Twitter right here.
My 13-year-old, I told him I'm going to have Brad Graham on today. You're having Brad Graham on today? I mean, seriously, dude. It's like, hey, I scouted in the NFL. You could be a little bit fired up about me, kid. I'm the one who pays for your freaking mortgage. I'm the one who's puts 3 squares on the table every day. You could love up on dad a little bit. It's got to be Brad Graham this, Brad Graham that. But no, you got a huge fan.
Shout out your son, man.
Yeah, young Chris Krueger is a big Brad Graham fan. All right, Brad. Hey, man, good seeing you. Great. Thanks for jumping in, spending so much time with us. Everybody go check out Brad's stuff. And Brad, as the draft gets closer, we'll, I agree with you. O-line is going to be a major, major area of study. You can't do O-line evaluations in a blink. It's going to take everything I got to do it. And I definitely want to hear your breakdown of it as well as we get close to it. So between now and April, do your studying and we'll get you back on. We'll talk O-linemen in March.
Absolutely. And I'm going to have to reach out to you, Larry, and get you on my channel as well. So we'll get something worked out. But again, as always, man, thank you for having me on, man. It's always a blast talking football with you.
All right, man. I'm going to play some spots and do a couple video chats. So I'll let you get on with your day. But the great Brad Graham, everybody. Wait, where's my, wait a second. In here. You know, there's
Hey,
always.
I love the picture that you used for the header. By the way,
Did you?
I like the vibe of the Oakley shades on it. That was a good one.
Here we go. Brad Graham, everybody. All right, Brad. Have a great Brad Graham. He is awesome, man. He is outstanding. And that's why he's got a huge audience. And that's why there's tons of people following him. And if you're not following him, you should. He's fantastic. Really, really good. And just solid from top to bottom. I hope you enjoyed some of that conversation with the great Brad Graham. All right, we're going to play a couple spots here. I'm going to put the video link in the chat. We'll go for a few more minutes. I got a couple more I want to share with you. It's all straight ahead on the Krueg Show.
Larry Krueger here for Telmetrics. Thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics. If you're an occupational therapist, if you're an orthopedic surgeon, a chiropractor, a physical therapist of any kind, Telmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice and will greatly benefit your patients. Telmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in the clinical and the telehealth environments. So using Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So for all your sports injury needs, or if you're a physical rehabilitation specialist of any kind, make sure you use telmetrics.co, Telmetrix.co. And thanks to Casey Bateman and all the good people at Telmetrics for being a proud sponsor of the Krueg. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Dan Coach Emilio. Dan is a buddy, and he is a phenomenal retirement planning specialist. And you can contact him today at securemoney.com or at his number 925-628-9966. There's a lot of uncertainty in our world right now, and you want to make sure that your money is secure. That is the key. Danny's got 25 years of experience, born and raised right here in the Bay Area, and he can help you get an immediate 10% premium bonus on your principal retirement account. So give him a call, 925-628-9966. He'll make an appointment with you, and you can sit down. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a deal. He'll consult with you and come up with a strategy to get you going to where you want to be. Once again, 925-628-9966, securemoney.com on the web. And thanks to Tony Casera and the good people at Casera's Italian Menswear. They are housing the Krueg Show t-shirts, and they're a proud sponsor of the show as well. The Krueg Show t-shirt, the Krueg Show podcast t-shirt is available there at their store in Dublin. Their address is 7372 San Ramon Road in Dublin, California. And go see Tony Casera and get yourself a Krueg Show t-shirt and support the show. And special thanks to our sponsor, New York Style Italian Sausage. That's right, NewYorkStyleSausage.com is their website. Phenomenal product, whether it's the breakfast sausage, the Italian mild, the Italian spicy, the chorizo. You cannot go wrong with New York Style Italian Sausage. Once again, NewYorkStyleSausage.com. Often imitated, never equaled.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, you know, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, you know, that life is good.
All right, welcome back to the Krueg Show. Larry Krueger with you on a Wednesday, and we are an hour and 20 minutes into our live stream talking with Brad Graham. And we appreciate Brad for joining the mix. Brad is always really good. Aussie says, great job, Brad and Larry. Thank you. Appreciate that. We got this one from Fazil says, calling us both goats. I don't know about that. Brad's very good. Hendrick says, you guys are gray. You two are gray. But then he followed it up in his next chat and said, oh, I meant great. There you go. I bet that you guys are gray. Well, I mean, I do have some grays coming in for sure. I mean, I got the fade going, but I got the grays. We got this one from Dusty Gold. Love Brad's Niner man cave. Yes, Brad's got the great Niner man cave. I did put the video link in the chat, and we're gonna have CJ here in just a second, who's gonna join us. But if you want to join us on the video, feel free to hit that link and join us. We'll take a couple video calls. Dusty Gold says, Larry, can you give us a heads up when you connect with Jesse Naylor? That's a conversation I can't miss. You know, that's so strange because I was literally just sending Jesse a note saying, would you like to stream? So I talked to I connected with Jesse month ago, 2 months ago, and we kind of decided that we would definitely stream together at some point. So yeah, I just sent him a text. I just sent him a direct tweet saying, hey, Jesse, do you want to stream? So we will definitely get Jesse on the stream. He's got his own channel doing some great things, and we'll get him on here. A couple of thoughts before we go to CJ, who's going to join us here. One, Jimmy Ward's been talking, his whole thing about how he asked Shanahan if he could go back to free safety, and he didn't want to play nickel anymore. And Shanahan responded, do you want to ride the bench? It all sounds very much like Jimmy Ward's on his way out. I hope that's not the case, because Jimmy Ward is I think one of the tone setters on the team. He's a tremendous player, and I would hate to see him leave. If you lose Jimmy Ward, you've lost a ton from your football team. So I hope that I'd like to see Jimmy Ward back. I'd like to see Emmanuel Moseley back. Listening to Lynch talk about Moseley, he said he's rehabbing. He basically indicated they want Moseley back. I don't think McGlinchey is going to be back. It doesn't seem like they can afford McGlinchey. I'm a little concerned that with D'Amico leaving, that he's going to take Kosaric with him. So you may see some defensive staff changes there. I hope that's not the case, because I like the Niners group of defensive coaches and I want them to have defensive continuity. That's a little bit of a concern. The Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, thing, the competition that, these guys are now the quarterbacks, going forward. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, both guys are raw. Purdy looked really good. Trey has great talent, needs to be developed. I don't know that Trey's ready to win right now. I don't know if Purdy Trey is an ideal combination, because if I'm Trey and I don't get the starting job, I think I'm good enough to start in Tennessee, or good enough to start in several different spots, really. So I think that's going to be one to watch. I think the 49ers are going to have to, have an open competition, and they should have an open competition. Brock's coming off an injury, a serious injury, and he was really good this year. And he shows that he understands a lot of the nuances of playing the position. So I would probably put him as the favorite to win the job, but I think there has to be, I wouldn't anoint anybody. I wouldn't hand Brock the keys and say, you're the quarterback and Trey, you're the backup. I think it's time for a competition. I think competition is good. I think it makes everybody better. So I think Trey's going to be better for having watched Brock. And I don't think there's any doubt he'll be better just from having done reps in this system. But there's nothing wrong with the competition. The only question I would have is if Brock wins that competition, now you've got Trey sitting the bench again. I don't know that that's good. I don't know that that's an ideal situation. So, I want to see a competition. I think it's fair. They both have shown some good things. They both have question marks surrounding them. I think a competition would be healthy and good. But what if Brock wins that competition? Then what? then maybe do you trade Trey? I don't think I want Trey as the backup. I don't know that Trey wants to be the backup. I don't know if I'm Trey's mom or dad or his agent. I don't know that I want him to be the backup. So that one's going to have to be figured out. But the Niners have a lot of questions. They got a lot of questions now. It's an amazing team that they always seem like they get to the postseason, and then if they get eliminated, there's always like more questions than we even had 2 weeks ago. So who's going to be the defensive coordinator? What kind of scheme are they going to run? Who's going to be the starting right tackle? Who's going to be the starting quarterback? Who's going to be the third linebacker? Is Aziz going to leave? Who's going to be the number 2 corner opposite Lenore? And all teams need 3 starting corners. You got Charvarius and Lenore. Who's the other corner? Is it E-Man Mosley? Are they bringing him back? So there's a lot of questions here for sure. All right, let's welcome back CJ. CJ was with us the other day, and he's back with us now. CJ, how are you, man? How's your Wednesday going?
It's still in morning, man.
Yeah,
It's still in morning because, as I said, I got up early in the morning. I drove to Philadelphia.
How was that drive? Because where are you now? You're in DC?
I'm in Greenville, North Carolina.
Oh, that's right. North Carolina. Yeah, so that's a freaking haul. How long did that take you?
6 hours.
6 hours there, 6 hours back.
Yeah.
What was the feeling like in the stadium with the Eagle fans? They can be quite obnoxious. Were you sporting Niner colors?
Yes, and honestly, truthfully, I don't think I'll ever attend a game there again in my life. I really don't.
Why? Tell us why. Give us the story.
Well, people sticking their middle fingers up at me and cursing at me, and then I had a guy in line had a little bag, and he kept knocking my leg as we was getting ready to go in the stadium, and almost had me on the brink of being thrown out of there because I was almost ready to fight. Right. Because you're contacting me, and you can say whatever you want, but just don't put your hands on me.
Well, I don't know about you can say whatever you want. There's also some lines there.
But when you cross the line,
yeah, when you get physical.
When you're touching me, that's a bad situation.
Right.
Fortunately, once I got in the game and the seats that I was located at, the Philly fans were pretty cool there. It was just mainly outside that I had problems right before I got in. But it was just I have so much anticipation. I'm like, man, the Fox News crew is right in front of me, and I'm seeing all these celebrity guests around. I mean, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa's brother.
He was sporting the Niner jacket. They were talking trash to him too.
Yeah, and he walked right by me. I got pictures of Joey Bosa walking by me and stuff like that. So I'm amped up, and 6 minutes after Anita Baker sings the anthem is over.
I know. And oh my God! And for a guy who drove 6 hours,
and then it's like the very thing I yelled. Because the moment Josh Johnson ran on the field, because when you're in the stands, you don't have the perspective of the broadcast. So Josh Johnson runs on the field, and I'm like, is that Josh Johnson?
Oh, no.
I said, we're fucked.
I said the same damn thing, and I like Josh.
I said it right then and there. I was like, man, it's over. I put my hoodie over my head. I was down with my hoodie over my head probably for about 5 minutes at least.
Oh.
And because I just knew it. I knew there was no chance at all. And really, I think I left the game probably towards the end of the third quarter. When they scored and went up 28, that's when I left.
Oh. And then what was the walk out of there like?
Man, it was the walk of shame. I'm walking up the steps. They're heckling me. Have a safe trip home.
I really think the 49ers would have won if they had Purdy. I really do. I think they would have won.
I honestly think so, too, just because of the way that our defense was playing. And it was just that if we just had some kind of sustainable offense, something going on. But there was just no hope when Josh Johnson went in there.
I know. And I felt bad for him too, because come on, man. I mean, we all know, I mean, he's a veteran. He's 36. He's a local guy. He went to Oakland Tech. He's a great person. And it's just he wasn't expecting to play, but I'm sure he prepared. But it's just he hasn't played. It's a totally different level. It's just he hadn't played in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, he couldn't even call a play in a huddle. Like I'm standing
Couldn't
on the
hear.
side.
He was 3 delay of games.
Yeah, and he just the players on the sidelines are looking at Shanahan, and I was just like, man, there's the Philly fan bought me a beer. That's how bad. That's how brutal that was.
Wow. He was there was no more fight in them. They're like, oh, we got to lift these guys up.
I was like,
man,
because he was a reasonable fan, the one that was right behind me. He was just like, yeah, I wanted to go.
He felt for you. He knew you.
And he was just like, but it's brutal when it's like this, man.
Supposedly the Niners are going back there next year, but you're not.
No, I'm not going back there, man. I'm not messing with these people, man. But it's just a brutal way to lose. Yeah. It's hard to process. And now Brock Purdy, man, I don't know. I don't know about his arm. I don't know about this 6-month recovery time that they got going on. I fear the worst. Just when you look at that replay and how brutal that hit was on his arm, I just
torn.
I don't see it looking good, man. I see him not being. He might not even play next year.
Really, you think it's that? You think it's a full season? I mean, we don't know. I mean, I will say this: Shanahan was like pretty adamant that he felt like he was going to be back in 6 months. 6 months. I don't know. I mean,
I just don't trust when it comes to injuries and stuff. I don't trust Shanahan when he talks about injuries at all.
Well, he's a head coach. I mean, he's just parroting. He's parroting what somebody else told him because he's not a doctor. So I mean, that's understandable. It's just I agree. It's like, I know he's hoping he's back in 6 months. He's hoping he's back for training camp, but it sounds like there's no guarantees. So that being said, are you comfortable based on what you saw earlier this year handing the ball back to Trey Lance, or do they need a veteran quarterback to play in addition to Trey Lance? I mean, where are you with Trey as far as putting him out there as the number one guy?
We have to build a QB room in some way, but it's going to have to be a really, really dirt cheap veteran, somebody to hold a clipboard. I don't know about Trey one way or the other. I mean, I was a fan of him coming out of the draft. I just don't, as what I've seen, I just don't know. I don't know really what.
That's where I'm at too.
At all. But we don't have no money really from a salary. Like you start talking about paying for an established guy to come in next year, you're talking about roster implications at that point about what you're going to do with that if you start messing around with putting money in the QB room.
I know. I mean, I'm thinking that if they really want to give Trey a full look, maybe bring in a third guy like Easton Stick, who's hardly a big name. He won't cost you anything. And at least him and Trey are friends going back to North Dakota State. Maybe you could build, help Trey build up a little bit by having somebody that he's comfortable with. I don't know. The other one, Andy Dalton, makes kind of some sense to me. Some people threw out Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, I think, is a pipe dream. That's not happening. I mean, they're not getting Aaron Rodgers. I don't really see the need for a like a Derek. People think Derek Carr. I don't know.
Oh, man, Derek. Don't mess with Derek Carr, man. He and then he's like he made $40 million. So now what we gonna? I couldn't see paying Derek more than $15 million to come to start for this team. So, and he's not going to want to accept that. So.
I don't know. So they're in a weird predicament. It's like Shanahan made it seem like Brock's going to be healthy by training camp. Well, if that's the case and he hasn't lost anything, then you got at least you got a starting caliber quarterback that can play right now. And then you've got Trey there, who you think's a starting caliber quarterback that can play eventually. So you got 2 starting quarterbacks, but and you got a relatively cheap deal, and that the whole thing is, I think their plan was to re-sign Ayuk, re-sign Bosa, right? So they're, they want a cheap quarterback. So it's gonna be very challenging to find a cheap alternative to go with what they have. So it's a tough one. So what are you, what's your mode now? Will you get into the draft and get into that? How many days before you're like, man, I'm over it?
I don't know. I think probably by the end of this week, after
Give it some
yeah,
time.
things are recapped, and then I don't know. I don't know. It might be OTAs before I'm really all the way plugged back into this thing, because we don't really have any draft pick. Well, not at the top of the draft. Anybody to really discuss drafting
Right.
at
No
the top.
first round pick, no second round pick.
No first round pick, no second round pick. So there's just nothing to really follow or cover. Anybody they grab in the third round or beyond is because they're not going to be household names exactly. So,
Well, CJ, thanks for jumping in, man. I know it's a rough day, and of course now you get the post-mortem press conference, and yesterday the players are cleaning out their lockers. Today they're kind of talking about the future, but Shanahan didn't look like he wanted no part of it. He looked like he didn't want to be even in there today. They got a lot of questions. They got to bolster their O-line. They got to find a replacement for Kinlaw. They got to decide if Jimmy Ward's coming back. Is E-Man Mosley coming back? If not, they need a corner. They need a safety. They definitely need some better offensive line help. And they look like they need another quarterback. They got 9 or 10 draft choices, and they don't have a lot of cap room. And they don't have a 1 or a 2. So it'll be interesting to see how this thing gets put back together. The one saving grace, and I mentioned this on my last live stream, and it's worth mentioning again. Look at the NFC. Who scares you outside of Philly in the NFC?
and Philadelphia, they're going to get this dissected at this offseason.
Right.
And they're going to lose people. So
what do you got? I mean, Tampa won the South. They have no quarterback.
They're not good.
Minnesota won the North.
They're not any
Who
good.
knows? They have no defense. Detroit, Green Bay without Rodgers. Dallas with Prescott, maybe if they made the right series of moves.
Prescott is a middle of the road guy.
Rams, maybe if we'll get off the deck and reverse course next year. I don't know. I see the Niners and the Eagles. It's Niners-Eagles in this conference going forward.
Yeah, for the next couple of years until we start selling. And it's hard to say that based on all those things that you listed that we got problems with. And that's why I so badly wanted to get it done with this group and the way things were, because I just knew that there was going to be a whole lot of change coming up.
Yep. Oh, I know. And it's like, I hate to say it. It's like, imagine if you're like Shanahan, you're grinding every day, long hours from like July on, every day, basically grinding. And then you think you got a Super Bowl caliber team. You put together this game plan. You're 6 plays into your first drive. The whole thing gets squashed. Now here you are a couple days later. People are blaming you. And because the game was over after Purdy got hurt, suddenly the only thing that matters to people is the challenge on Devontae's catch and the decision to have Croft block Reddick. So we're dissecting a few plays before the game was over. Everything after that need not be dissected, but it also puts all of the blame squarely on Kyle's head. And at the end of the day, I think Kyle's a top tier NFL coach. I think he deserves the blame for that, for not challenging the Devontae Smith, but I don't think there's a lot of blame that really should go his direction on the way Croft was blocking there for Reddick. It just happens. This is what happens when you have a loaded front, when you sack the quarterback 70 times. That means they're going to have some big time strengths, that they're going to have mismatches in their favor. And you saw it. You saw it up close. Now, how do the Niners respond? They probably got to get a little better on the offensive line. They got to get a blocking tight end. They can't just have one number 1 tight end and then 3 guys who are just kind of number 3s. They got to have a true number 2 tight end who can really block in line and give them a receiving option. So that's easier said than done. And it's not an easy piece to find. So who knows? But anyway, CJ, appreciate you jumping in, man. You got a final thought on the way out?
Scott, man, I hope we can figure it out and just go Niners
Go
somehow.
Niners. All right, CJ, be well, man. Eloy Rodriguez donates, and he says, we need at least 2 A-plus quarterbacks. Jimmy will be gone. All right. Is Lance and Purdy qualify in your mind? Are those A-plus quarterbacks? Eloy says, I'm not over the fumble from from RG to the Giants back in the 80s. Oh, my God. Eloy's not from the 80s. You're not over it. All right. I'll say this, anytime I get talking about the Niners, people say, oh, are you over this? You over that? I'm still not over Harbaugh calling the timeout with, on 1st and goal on the 5 when you had Frank Gore in his prime, you had Colin Kaepernick, and you had an old Ravens defense that had old man Pollard and old man Ed Reed and old man Ray Lewis at the end of a long drive, and you called a timeout instead of running Kaepernick or running Gore. That was the one. That was the one. That was the 6th ring right there. That should have been the 6th ring. They screwed that one up. The Chiefs game, yeah, they had a 10-point lead, but let's be honest, the Chiefs were scoring a ton that year. And if that game had gone 10 more minutes, I think the Chiefs win by even more. I mean, they really were rolling there at the end. So the one that, to me, is the one that got away was the Ravens. Man, you lost to the Ravens, and you had them down. Chris Hansen says, Michael James fumble. Oh, my God, don't even get me going. All right, that is going to do it for us. We got people who are saying, when can you tell us about O-linemen in the draft? And believe me, I'm already started draft prep, already looked at all of the players in the regular season. Now I'm going through the all-star games. I'll have something here in the next week or two, guys that I'm really looking at. But I threw you one earlier today as far as free agent sleeper offensive lineman. I like Nick Allegretti from the Chiefs, who I think can play guard or center. And I think I'd like to have Allegretti. I mean, he's tough. He's versatile. He's young. He's cheap. He's been in a good scheme that's really, relies on their offensive linemen to do a hell of a job. So that's the free agent sleeper that I'm looking at right now is Nick Allegretti. Hendrick says thoughts on Daron Payne or Marcus Davenport. They'd both be great. Are you kidding me? Davenport's big edge rusher with long arms, very athletic. I don't love him as much. Daron Payne, I love. The Niners, though, need an anchor on their defensive line. And I know Hassan Ridgeway could have really helped, but Kinlaw didn't anchor, and they really badly need to have that second interior player next to Armstead. Armstead is crazy good. I mean, he really is. And his functional strength is tremendous. It gets better every year. He's really a tremendous two-way player. He can play the pass, he can play the run, but he needs a tag team partner in there. So, that's a guy. That's a guy that they need an anchor next to Eric Armstead. And Hendricks says, I think Payne would be our anchor. Well, only thing about Payne that I see, I mean, he's such an outstanding pass rusher as well that he kind of gives you an interior push. I don't know how strong he is against anchoring against the run. I'd have to study him a little bit, but I mean, just looking at the free agent market, let me take a look here before we get out of here. Just take a look at the defensive tackle position, because that's always an interesting one. Let's see here. Every team in the league, defensive tackles, unrestricted. Well, Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, 1-2, very top of the list. Who else is interesting on this list? David Onyemata, really good player for the Saints. Daron Payne, but as I said before, Daron Payne's going to get paid. He's Daron Payne made 3.6 this year. He's 25. He's 25 years old. Rakeem Nunez Roches, who's played with Tampa and I think maybe Kansas City. He's kind of interesting. Sue and Linval Joseph, Hassan Ridgeway. Those are all anchors. Jonathan Hankins. You're talking about guys who really anchor inside. No doubt about that. Mo Hurst is on this list. Seeing if there's anybody at the bottom of the list. I'll give you one that I like. I really like Colin Saunders, who good player, plays for the Chiefs, defensive tackle, 25 years old, 4 years in the league, came out of Western Illinois. I love Colin Saunders, and that would be the guy that I would target. As far as age, it's the right age. Power, he gives you power inside. He can definitely stop the run. He gives you a little bit of quickness in there. He's not strictly a 2-down guy. You can play him a little bit on some passing downs. Of the group that I'm seeing, Colin Saunders is the best defensive tackle for the price. Eloy Rodriguez says Roger Craig back in the 80s. Giants won that Super Bowl. Oh, I know. 1990 NFC Championship game. Was LT popped it out. Dorsey, the defensive tackle, jumped on it. Matt Barr kicks the field goal. And the 49ers were clearly better than the New York Giants that year. The only question I would have in that one, and I brought this up to Steve Young. Joe Montana got knocked out of that game. Okay, so that was going to be Steve Young going up against Jim Kelly and the Buffalo Bills. That Buffalo Bills team might have been the best of their Buffalo Bills teams. Steve Young was an incredible talent, but Steve Young, also had to have his own, rough moments. I think his first playoff game, he had a bunch of turnovers against Washington, and he eventually became this all-world player in the mid-90s who played at a crazy level. But in January of 90 or I guess January of 91, you weren't getting the Steve Young that beat the Cowboys in the 94 NFC Championship game. You're getting a younger Steve Young. And would a younger Steve Young had beaten the Buffalo Bills in that Super Bowl in January of 91? I don't know. The Niners were stacked. They were loaded, but Joe had played all year. So Steve would have gone in there. He would have been inexperienced. That one is like one for the debate. With the Niners with Steve Young had beaten the Buffalo Bills in that first Super Bowl before the Bills got crushed against the Cowboys the next 2 years. Brian says, Krueger, you going to watch the Warrior game? Am I going to watch the Warrior game? I watch every Warrior game. I mean, whether I tape it or watch it live. Warriors come on in 5 minutes, and they're in Minnesota against the T-Wolves. Absolutely. And we'll probably do another live stream tonight with Danny and with Rye after the Warriors game tonight. So look for that around 8:30 tonight on the Krueg Show. By the way, thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the channel. We are sitting today at 12,750 subscribers. We just got to 12,000, I think, on Saturday. So we've added 750 subscribers just since Saturday. And we've added almost 3,000 subscribers in the last 4 weeks alone. So if you're one of the people that's in the chat still and you haven't liked or subscribed, please like and subscribe. If you hit like, that helps the algorithm help more people find our shows. And if you hit subscribe, you'll just be alerted every time. You'll get a little alert every time I go live. Then you can also be a channel member for $5 a month. And we got a bunch of channel members, brand new channel members as well. We give them special content as well. Carlos Guido says, I'll tune in, Larry. Love the work. Appreciate that. Absolutely appreciate it. Val Ramos says, I'm on it. Warrior game, Warriors T-Wolves. Let's see what the Warriors have going. Are the Warriors going to make a big trade? That was the other one. There's a lot of talk about Matisse Thybulle out of Philly, and I think you could probably get him for Moses Moody. Would you trade Moses Moody for Matisse Thybulle? I mean, the one thing about Thybulle is he can play defense, and he's a really, really good defender. Now, he's not much of a shooter, but he is a tremendous defensive player. Dusty Gold says, thanks, Krug. Have Dan eat the raw meat if you get to 13,000 subs. We're getting there. It's just a matter of, do we get there today? One also big day on the channel, and I need to finish with this. Thanks to Damon and Mary, the owners of Pig and a Pickle. The new title sponsor of the Krug Show is Pig and a Pickle. and go to pigandapickle.com. They've got 2 locations. Awesome barbecue restaurant. If you're here in Northern California, the best barbecue you're going to find is Pig and a Pickle. And they got a really cool spot in Corte Madera. They're at 341 Corte Madera Town Center, right there in the middle of Corte Madera Town Center, right there in the mall, the outdoor mall, I should say, in Corte Madera. Stop by, say hi to Damon, say hi to Mary, and get yourself some amazing brisket. The brisket's great. The ribs are incredible. The homemade sausages, everything's made from scratch daily. They run out of food. So, I mean, that right there, get there early. They close at 8:00, but get there before, because if you walk in at 7:45 thinking you're having brisket, chances are the brisket's going to be gone. So they got a great spot in Corte Madera. They're also got a really cool spot in Emeryville, in the public marketplace there in Emeryville. And they're open 5 days a week in Emeryville. I think Monday, Tuesday, they're off in Emeryville, but 7 days a week in Corte Madera. Pig and a Pickle. Amazing brisket. I think it's the best brisket I've ever had, but they also have some incredible other things that you need to try. The potato salad, tremendous. The brisket chili. Now, I've never made brisket chili, but brisket chili is awesome, and they make it incredibly. And then they don't have them in Emeryville, but if you go out to Marin County, they make these potato chips that are homemade potato chips. They cook them in beef fat. And I don't know that I've ever had a better chip. I mean, I literally sat down at the bar. He handed me a bag of these beef fallow potato chips. And it's absolutely mouth-watering. Absolutely incredible. Mark Graves says, do they have burnt ends? Yes. Get the burnt ends off the brisket. The brisket chili. Nick says the brisket chili sounds bomb. Oh, it is. It's absolutely incredible. And so the key is, what do I want you all to do? I want you guys all to go to Pig and a Pickle. And when you go in there, get the brisket, but tell Damon, tell Mary, hey, you know what? Krueg sent me. I'm listening to the Krueg show, loving the Krueg show. And thanks for sponsoring the Krueg show. Dusty Gold says, Larry rules. Get them the t-shirts, Larry. Good eats, and grab a Krueg t-shirt. That's right. I'll get the t-shirts. By the way, yeah, Larry Krueger sent me. That's what MF says to say. Go to Pig and a Pickle in Emeryville. Go to Pig and a Pickle in Corte Madera. Heck, go to both spots. Stop off in Emeryville, then go to Corte Madera. And tell Damon, tell Mary that Larry Krueger sent me, and they'll take care of you. And also, by the way, I just ordered 300 Krueg Show t-shirts. I'm not wearing mine today, but I got a Krueg Show t-shirt. It's just like our logo, which you see if you're checking out my YouTube page. So if you want one of the Krueg Show t-shirts, I have them in XL, I think large, XL, double XL, and I even ordered a couple triple XLs for some of our bigger Krueg Show fans. But there's a bunch of different ways you can get a hold of me. You can DM me on Twitter. But just if you want one of the t-shirts, I'll wear one. Yes, Hendrik says, will you wear one of the shirts later tonight? I absolutely will. I'll wear my shirt later tonight. And I have a list of people, like 20 deep, of people who have already given me their addresses and want t-shirts. The t-shirt's $25 plus whatever it takes to ship it to you. Right now, I'm going to go to the place and research exactly what it's going to cost to send these out in envelopes and that kind of thing. But yes, that's what it is. $25 plus shipping, and I'll send it to you. So just anybody who wants a t-shirt, and I've gotten a bunch of requests. I've got them written down. Send me your name and your address somehow, some way, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, DM me on Twitter. If you want a shirt and I'm not following you on Twitter, just follow me and tell me, and I'll follow you back, and you can DM me. And then I'll get you, we'll get them sent out in the next couple days, and you'll have your Krueg Show t-shirt. So really, it's a good looking shirt. Hendrik says, send me a large. Hendricks, I'll be sending you a large. He says, I'll give you an offer you can't refuse.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner.
Watch yourself. But hit Pig and a Pickle. Thank you to Damon. Thank you to Mary for being proud sponsors of the Krueg Show. Our new title sponsor. It's not the Krueg Show. It's the Pig and a Pickle Krueg Show. Going forward. Thanks to everybody. We'll see you later on tonight.
Yeah. Never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I